Most financial stress does not arrive like a lightning bolt, and it is almost never the result of a single catastrophic event. Instead, it tends to accumulate quietly, almost invisibly, over time. What follows is a clear explanation of how that process unfolds and why it often goes unnoticed until its effects are already felt. It usually begins with something small and entirely reasonable. You receive a raise, so you move to a place with a little more space or better light, and the decision feels earned. It feels aligned with progress rather than excess, a natural step forward that seems to confirm stability. Then another change follows, often just as logical. The old car begins to feel unreliable, while the newer one appears safer and more efficient. Once again, the decision feels justified, practical, and consistent with responsible planning. Over time, small conveniences begin to layer in. Meal delivery saves time, streaming services add entertainment, and subscriptions reduce friction in daily life. Each cost feels minor on its own, a small trade-off for making life easier. Eventually, something subtle shifts. You stop making the compromises you once did, choosing the name brand or the direct flight without much deliberation. In the background, the financial cushion that once provided flexibility begins to fade, often without drawing attention to itself. This slow drift, this nearly invisible upgrade to daily life, has a name. It is a common pattern that affects most people as their income grows, shaping spending in ways that feel natural rather than deliberate. It is known as lifestyle creep, and it's important to understand that it is a process rather than a personal failure. As income rises, the baseline cost of living increases almost automatically, becoming slightly higher with each step. Over time, what once felt optional begins to feel necessary. The real risk is not simply spending more money, it's the psychological shift in which yesterday's luxury becomes today's necessity, resetting expectations to a higher baseline. Once that reset occurs, stepping back down becomes far more difficult than expected. It's easy to attribute this pressure entirely to the economy or to rising prices. However, it's important to separate internal behavioral patterns from external forces. Understanding that distinction changes how the problem is interpreted. Lifestyle creep raises your personal cost of living from the inside, while inflation raises prices across the economy from the outside. When both occur at the same time, the financial strain can feel overwhelming. The pressure may feel similar, but the sources are fundamentally different. Inflation is often measured using tools such as the Consumer Price Index, which tracks price changes across a standard basket of goods. Lifestyle creep, by contrast, comes from quietly adding more expensive items to your own personal basket. Over time, that basket becomes heavier, even if prices elsewhere remain stable. The true cost of lifestyle creep is not tied to any single purchase. It shows up as the gradual erosion of financial resilience, as the margin that once provided breathing room slowly disappears. This loss often goes unnoticed until it becomes consequential. Margin is the space between what you earn and what you must spend. It is the buffer that allows a surprise expense to remain manageable rather than turning into a crisis. Lifestyle creep is dangerous because it steadily consumes that buffer without announcing itself. This pattern is unfolding alongside broader economic shifts. Over the past few decades, the share of national income held by the middle class has declined, placing additional pressure on household finances. For many people, financial margin is already constrained before lifestyle creep even enters the picture. Research has shown that the median net worth of middle-income families declined significantly in the early 21st century. Even when incomes rose for some households, the underlying financial foundation often became more fragile. Higher earnings did not consistently translate to greater stability. Given this context, a natural question emerges. Why is it so difficult to reverse course once spending has increased? The answer lies less in budgeting tools and more in psychology. Upgrading feels like progress, reinforcing a sense of forward movement. Downgrading, even slightly, often feels like failure. This emotional response makes adjustment far more difficult than most people anticipate. This dynamic is shaped by a cognitive bias known as loss aversion. People tend to experience the pain of losing something more intensely than the pleasure of gaining something equivalent. As a result, cutting back feels emotionally costly, even when it's financially prudent. When an expense becomes part of daily life, removing it is perceived as a loss rather than a choice. Canceling a subscription or skipping a routine purchase doesn't register as restraint, it registers as deprivation. Lifestyle creep is also reinforced by the surrounding environment. Social comparison, professional norms, targeted advertising, and subscription-based convenience all normalize constant upgrading. Over time, moving up begins to feel expected rather than optional. The solution is not extreme restraint or denying every reward. It's awareness applied deliberately. It involves noticing which upgrades genuinely improve quality of life and which ones quietly reduce flexibility. Lifestyle creep rarely announces itself. It feels reasonable, gradual, and earned, yet over time it trades away peace of mind and adaptability. Some of the most expensive changes are not the ones that draw attention, but the ones that become normal enough to disappear from view. Before closing, it's important to note that this content is for educational and informational purposes. It should not be considered financial advice, and individual circumstances vary. Consulting a qualified professional may be appropriate when making personal financial decisions.